Picture this. Your company just spent millions on an AI pilot. The demo wowed the board, the vendor slide deck looked like the future, and everyone started practicing how to say generative in meetings. 6 months later, that same project is quietly dead, buried in a folder called backlog, with nothing in production. Here is the twist. This is not a rare horror story. It is the normal outcome, and AWS just launched something designed to kill that failure pattern for good. A widely cited MIT report says 95% of enterprise AI pilots fail. Not 50, not 70, 95. Budgets get burned, proof of concepts impress in conference rooms, and then nothing ever touches a real customer or a production workflow. At reInvent, AWS rolled out AgentCore, and they are not pretending this is another toy SDK. They are openly going after that 95% failure rate. In a minute, you will see why this shift changes who actually wins in enterprise AI. To understand why AgentCore matters, you have to understand why pilots die. Traditional software is deterministic. Same input, same output, every time. Large language models are not. They improvise, they hallucinate, they misread policy, and sometimes they just invent facts. That is cute in a chatbot demo. It is catastrophic when you are moving money, touching medical records, or hitting internal payment AP is. Here is the pattern break. The problem is not just the model. It is that enterprises cannot trust systems they cannot control or explain. Think about the gap between the slick demo and the real world. In the demo, you have hand-picked prompts, curated data, and a friendly audience. In production, you have messy support tickets, half-filled CRM records, angry customers, and compliance officers who assume everything will go wrong. Suddenly, you need audit trails, rate limits, error budgets, and incident playbooks for an agent that can call tools on its own. This is where most AI pilots hit a wall. Security blocks access, legal demands guarantees, and ops cannot even explain why the bot refunded $5,000 instead of $50. This is what people now call pilot purgatory, agents that can technically call tools, trigger workflows, and act autonomously, but never earn the trust to touch real systems. The missing piece is not just better models, it is infrastructure that treats policy, evaluation, and memory as first-class citizens, not as bolt-on afterthoughts. AWS is betting big that if you bake those into the execution path, you turn AI from an experimental toy into governed infrastructure. And in a moment, we will dig into how they are doing it step by step. AgentCore is AWS' answer to the enterprise dilemma. Instead of saying here is another build your own agent toolkit, they ship a production platform. At its core, AgentCore is a managed gateway, a policy engine, an evaluation system, and a memory layer, all wired directly into the agent execution path. The pitch is simple but aggressive. Run agents across any model, hit internal tools and AP is, and still respect corporate rules, SL as, and audit trails without babysitting infrastructure or gluing together random services. At reInvent, AWS elevated 3 ideas to always-on components inside AgentCore: policy, evaluations, and episodic memory. These are not optional plugins. Every request and every tool call flows through them. Policy turns natural language rules into executable guardrails. Evaluations measure quality and safety continuously. Episodic memory lets agents learn from past successes and failures across many sessions. Here is why that matters. It moves governance from slide decks into code that actually runs in the hot path. Let us start with policy, because this is where AWS tries to hard-code corporate common sense. Today, most teams stuff warnings into prompts. Do not leak secrets, do not browse internal sites, do not approve refunds over $100. That works in a demo. It collapses when you scale to hundreds of workflows and millions of calls. AgentCore flips this. You describe constraints in plain English, and it compiles them into deterministic policy code that runs in milliseconds before the agent ever sees a tool. Here is the interesting part. Policy lives outside the model. Every agent call routes through the AgentCore gateway, which consults the policy engine before exposing any capability. If the rule says block URLs containing internal unless the username starts with admin, the agent never even sees that tool when the condition fails. It is like a firewall for agent actions, not just network packets. For enterprises burned by hallucinations and jailbreaks, this is the difference between please behave and cannot misbehave by design. Under the hood, AgentCore treats your English policy as source code. A compiler parses sentences like forbids Slack messages unless user has messaging right scope, resolves entities like Slack and messaging scope, and emits low-level rules bound to your identity system and tools. At runtime, there is no slow model in the loop, just fast, deterministic checks on every request. AWS talks about thousands of requests per second, which puts this squarely in infrastructure territory. In other words, policy stops being a wiki page and becomes part of your execution path. Now, even if you lock down behavior, you still have a second problem: quality drift and silent failure. That is where evaluations come in. AgentCore ships with built-in evals for correctness, helpfulness, conciseness, instruction following, faithfulness, relevance, coherence, and refusal behavior. Instead of hacking together a pilot and then asking, did it feel smart, AWS wants you to define these evals first, set a baseline, and gate every change on measurable impact. This changes how teams ship agents, not just how they debug them. Think about an agent that looks perfect in a lab demo, then slowly degrades once you plug in real tools and noisy customer data. Without continuous evals, you only notice when an executive gets a hallucinated refund policy in their inbox. With AgentCore, you can run evaluations on demand or continuously, compare behavior week over week, and literally block a new version from going live if correctness drops 10%. The stakes are huge here. This is how you keep an AI system from quietly eroding trust one bad answer at a time. But off-the-shelf metrics only get you halfway. The real power move is custom evals. AWS even shows a silly example on purpose: a talk like a pirate eval. You literally require the agent to answer like a pirate, and the eval fails any response that sounds like LinkedIn instead of Blackbeard. Swap pirate for your brand voice, your compliance rules, your triage workflow, and you get the idea. In a moment, we will zoom into how this turns evaluations into live governance, not just a quarterly report. Imagine you run a bank. You can define a custom eval that demands formal tone, hedged language, and explicit risk disclaimers in every answer. Or a healthcare org that encodes a multi-step triage workflow and mandatory regulatory disclaimers. AgentCore can replay real conversations, score each step, and flag any response that breaks the script. Those scores feed into CloudWatch alongside latency and error rates, so engineering, legal, and marketing stare at the same graphs. Suddenly, good enough is not a feeling. It is a number. The third pillar is episodic memory, which turns AgentCore from a clever router into something closer to an institutional brain. Instead of treating every request as a one-off, agents can store and retrieve experiences across many sessions. What worked, what failed, which tools solved which problems. Those memories feed back into runtime behavior and also into evaluations, so you can track whether agents actually improve, not just improvise faster. For enterprises, that is the difference between a chatbot and a teammate that learns. Step back and you see the strategic twist. Most tools in this space bolt on guardrails, evals, or memory as separate products. AWS is baking them in. Policy, evaluations, and episodic memory sit directly in the execution path behind a managed gateway that can run at enterprise scale. That built-in approach matters. It means no shadow agents, no forgotten scripts, no bypass paths around your rules. This is a blueprint for turning AI from a risky side project into governed infrastructure. So what does this mean for you if you are building or buying AI in a company that cannot afford to experiment on real customers? It means the questions change. Not just which model is smartest, but which platform gives you provable guardrails, measurable quality, and agents that actually learn from their mistakes. It means slideware policies are not enough. Your rules have to live where the actions happen in code at wire speed. And the teams that figure this out first will be the ones that escape pilot purgatory and ship real, trusted AI systems. If you are watching this and thinking our pilot is stuck right now, you are not alone. That 95% failure rate is the norm, not the exception. The real question is whether your next move is another flashy demo or an architecture that bakes in trust from day one. Policy as code from plain English. Evaluations as a performance review system, not an afterthought. Memory as a way to connect past behavior to measurable improvement. That is the bar AWS just set with AgentCore. We are still early. No platform, not even AWS, has all the answers for safe, autonomous agents inside critical systems. But the direction is clear. Built-in beats bolted on. Governed beats vibes. If you want more deep dives on how these new AI control planes work, what competitors like Anthropic and others are doing, and what this means for jobs and workflows over the next few years, hit subscribe. Drop a comment with where your AI pilot is stuck and what you wish these platforms would solve next. That feedback shapes what we cover in the next episode.